All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our Off-Road Essentials with Morrison's Outdoor Adventures. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Mike Morrison, and my wife and I, we run Morrison's Outdoor Adventures, where we do training, guided trips, trail rides, and recovery training for the off-road world, right? So, what are we going to get into tonight? Well, we had a request for first aid. So we are going to jump right into talking about first aid and just kind of a brief introductory. Again, we're kind of setting a 1 hour time limit to these off-road essentials. But hopefully you guys are packed in, ready to learn, right? And before we get into first aid, there's a couple of things I want to talk about. There's actually two particular groups. The first I want to talk about is Tread Lightly. So Tread Lightly is a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to teaching outdoor ethics and working to keep our trails open. They are based out of Utah, but they do stuff all over the East Coast. They have tread trainers as well as master tread trainers all over the United States and even in Canada and other places of the world. But they teach outdoor ethics, right? And all of those ethics can be dumbed down into five main principles based on the acronym TREAD, right? Travel responsibly, respect the rights of others, educate yourself, avoid sensitive areas, and do your part. So they are membership driven. So I encourage you to become a member of Tread Lightly and practice the Tread Lightly principles when you are on the trail. The next organization I want to talk about is Southern Four-Wheel Drive Association. So they are in the Southeast. Southern Four-Wheel Drive Association, again, is a nonprofit, membership-driven organization that focuses on keeping our trails open. So they typically, not only do they work as far as in the background with grant projects and stuff like that, but they also do education and all kinds of things. Both Sarah and myself do sit on the board. Sarah's the director of business, and I am the director of education for Southern. And Bo Rosa with Triad Jeep Club out of North Carolina is the president. But again, nonprofit. Coming up here soon is Southern Four-Wheel Drive's Trail Fest. So Southern Four-Wheel Drive hosts two different events every year, right? And this is how they raise their funds for their grant programs and for the legal fees for battles on trails. So the next one coming up is Trail Fest. It is right outside of Chattanooga at Colmont OHV in Tennessee. It's an amazing park. It is April 11th through the 14th. I'm going to throw up a QR code up there for you guys to see. Scan that, and it will take you right to the registration site. So they always have a huge raffle. Again, this is how they raise their funds and stuff for their grant projects, education programs, all that cool stuff. I encourage you to become a member and join these events. Again, the events are amazing. I've met some of the coolest people out there going to these events, and there's tons of educational opportunities. I'll be doing educational classes there, as well as guided trail rides. If you've never been to a park, Trail Fest moves every 2 years. So it was at Uari. Now it's moving over to Colmont for the next 2 years. And again, Colmont's a newer park, and Southern did help get that park started by helping apply for RTP funding for that park. So I'll leave that QR code up for a little bit. Again, that's Trail Fest, April 11th through the 14th. Great people there, and it's a great opportunity to win some really cool prizes at an awesome raffle and support an organization. Here in Kentucky, we would not have the Daniel Boone Backcountry Byway without Southern Four-Wheel Drive's help. So those are the two organizations I wanted to talk about. And now we are going to jump right into wilderness first aid, right? That's what I want to talk about is wilderness first aid. Because when we are off-road, typically we've crossed over rough terrain, even if you're at a public park like Windrock or something like that. So we've crossed over rough terrain. If something were to happen to either the vehicle or to someone on the trail, it is going to take us more than an hour to get out. So we call it the golden hour, right? And that golden hour is what we kind of refer to, and we'll get into this a little bit more. talking about that. But the golden hour is what we kind of refer to when we're talking about accidents or injuries on the trail. So wilderness first aid is really centric around that. It's not your typical first aid where you can be at a hospital in 20, 30 minutes. This is when you're outside of that golden hour. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying that I am in no way, shape, or form certified to teach this. But again, it was asked, so I'm going to give you guys some tips and tricks and show you some of the things that I do and carry with me, so you can be prepared, right? But if you're going to be spending a lot of time in the backcountry, I really urge you to go through a organization like Knowles or Solo. There's even online classes now, and get your wilderness first aid certification. The wilderness first aid, I think it takes 2 days, if I remember right, and then it's a 1-day certification every few years. I did the Solo course, so that's kind of what I'm going to build off of and kind of talk about today. But all those courses are great, and they've been certified and around for years. A lot of guide programs, if you've ever gone with a guide hiking, hunting, rock climbing, kayaking, whitewater, anything like that, most likely that guide had either Knowles or Solo or one of the big groups that does that certification. They maintain those certifications. I maintain my wilderness first aid certification. At one point in time, I was wilderness first responder, but I don't maintain that one anymore. That's more a little bit more serious, right? That's more for like EMTs and stuff like that going out. But it is a good one. So I'm going to throw this up here. I've got a PowerPoint. Ooh, I'm getting fancy tonight. I've got a PowerPoint here, and I'm going to do my best to kind of keep up with questions and comments. But if you have a question or a comment, just post it down in the chat, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, just post it down there, and I'll do my best to kind of run back and catch up on that. Hey, Bo. Yeah, there's our president of Southern Four-Wheel Drive right there, Bo Rosa. So, all right, wilderness first aid. First thing I want to talk about is that golden hour, right? What is that golden hour? It's a period of time immediately after a traumatic injury, right? You slipped and fall and twisted an ankle, or you fell down a rock face, or the hill climb was slippery and you slipped and tumbled down to the bottom and hurt your neck, or anything, right? Anything, even the simplest of things when you're in the backcountry, can lead to extreme complications. You broke a finger, now it's hard to steer. You broke an ankle and it's hard to get out and walk. You twisted or sprained an ankle, or you have a cut, it could get infected. So really, traumatic isn't necessarily like what we typically think of as an injury. It could be a whole lot simpler than that, right? If we're spending 2 or 3 days out in the backcountry and we get a cut, we got to make sure it stays clean so it doesn't get infected, right? But it's a period of time immediately after a traumatic injury during which there is the highest likelihood that prompt medical and surgical treatment will prevent lasting complications or death. Okay, now, okay, when I say lasting complications, right? Typically in the medical industry, when they refer to the golden hour outside of death, right? Outside of death, let's think about lasting complications. You lose a finger, you lose circulation in one of your arms or toes or something like that, frostbite, anything like that. If typically they say if you can get to a hospital within that hour, your chances of saving life or limb drastically increases. So what wilderness first aid does is it takes that process, because we're in the wilderness and we can't get there, and it makes it so that we can keep those chances as high as possible, right? So that's the golden hour. And as you kind of hear me kind of talk about that, that's what I'm referring to. So going to the next slide here, all right, wilderness first aid patient assessment system, okay? I refer to it as the triple S, okay? There's all different terminology for this, but I refer to it as a triple S. It's size up the scene and safety first, right? Size up the scene and safety first. When someone gets hurt, we watch a vehicle roll over, or someone slips and falls down a slippery hill, whatever, immediately, right, as humans, our adrenaline spikes. So we lose fine motor skills and decision-making capability at the snap of a finger. So we have to really be cognizant and slow down and size it up. If it's a vehicle rollover, how do we approach that vehicle? Is it stable? Are we running up to it on slippery ground, right? Or a hill climb that's slippery, somebody rolls down and tumbles down, are we running after them, right? Take care of yourself first. Okay, this is super important because we get so focused and tuned in to getting to whoever was hurt or getting to the problem that we can become a statistic, right? We can be an accident. Take care of yourself first. Running into the scene can lead to further accidents. You can't help somebody if you are hurt, right? Or if there's people running in there and somebody gets hurt. Now, out of that group, we're going from 1 accident to 2 accidents, 3, 4, right? I've seen these series of bad decisions happen on the trail, right? I watched at Uwharrie an ATV roll over on up the trail, and a guy was on his ATV, and instead of parking it and carefully walking up 30 yards, he, revs it and starts bouncing through the rocks, and then he rolls his and becomes pinned underneath of it. Now you have 2 accidents, right? So make sure that when in groups, you handle the bystanders after you handle yourself. An accident spikes that adrenaline, and even in the group, everybody else is starting to make poor choices. 1 accident quickly become 2 or more. Once we get through handling ourselves and then the group, now we can attend to the patient, right? That patient's not going anywhere in the extra minute that it takes you to get there, right? Typically, if we have an issue on the trail and it's that fine of a timeline, unfortunately, there's not going to be a whole lot that we can do to help out, right? So, hey, Dan, no worries. We're just getting started here. And just so you guys know, all of these streams are being recorded and saved on our YouTube channel. So you can go back and watch any of this stuff on YouTube at any point in time. And some of it does get saved on Facebook, but I find it easier to kind of watch on YouTube, and I try to keep it in a playlist there. So feel free to go back and watch that. And hey, shameless plug, subscribe to us, right? Any little bit of likes and subscribes and shares you guys can do help us out. So, right, triple S, size up the scene, safety first, take care of yourself first, handle the group after yourself, then attend to the patient, right? All right. Following along with the patient assessment system, right? Once we get to that patient, what was that method or mechanism of injury, right? How was that patient hurt? Did they get pinned underneath the vehicle that rolled over? Did they slip and fall on their ankle? Did they twist their ankle wrong? Were they jumping off a rock face and they fell on their back, right? This is super important because this affects the first steps you're going to take in stabilizing the patient, right? Because there's the mechanism of injury, right? But based on that mechanism of injury, the next thing is if it's what we call a positive MOI, a positive mechanism of injury, then that's an injury that did or could still cause damage to the spine. General recommendation of immobilizing the patient to prevent further injury to the spine in the event of a positive MOA. If we're unsure of if it's positive, right? If we're unsure, we should still immobilize that patient. I have a friend who was big into dirt bikes, right? Big into dirt bikes. Later on in life, mid-20s, right? Early 20s, out riding dirt bikes with a group of friends. He got in a bad accident and hit a tree, right? Or was thrown into a tree and jumped up, was walking around, shaking the cobwebs out. Wasn't seeming like they were hurt too bad. I wasn't there, but wasn't seeming like they were hurt too bad. Got back on the motorcycle and started riding a little bit further, and he had damaged his spine, but his adrenaline spiked and he didn't realize it. And he wasn't necessarily feeling the pain, and he is permanently paralyzed now because of that damage to his spine and further damaging it by moving around, right? So if it's a positive mechanism of injury or we're unsure, you need to immobilize that patient, right? Immobilize that patient. Have somebody holding their head steady, keeping their neck still. Next, patient assessment system, and this is another important, quickly be forgotten, right? We call it BSI, or body substance isolation. What we're looking to do at that point in time, because we're going to be putting our hand and hurt, okay? And there's other things to worry about and lasting effects that can come out by things like transferring blood types or whatever. So what we're going to do is isolate all bodily substances and ourselves, right? If I got a cut or a nick on my hand or something like that, that may be being, or it provides a point for some of their fluids to get in, right? So we want to make sure that we isolate that. And what I mean by that is where the mouth-to-mouth resuscitation or CPR or anything like that, you have to have some type of mouth designed for that. Nitrile gloves, once we go to putting on hands on someone, right? Again, we want to limit those lasting effects. Transfer of diseases, anything like that. It may be somebody that you don't know, right? And they may have some type of illness that we don't want to catch. So communicate. Okay, this is a somewhat my opinion, right? But as we start talking about the ABCDEs of patient assessment, communicate with the patient. Even if they aren't necessarily responding to you, it's good to communicate, right? Because if at some point in time they do start responding to you, it can speed up the later processes where we are trying to see how well, what's this level of consciousness this person has, right? Are they responsive? So we can be asking questions and stuff like that that potentially could give us some answers to what's going on. But at the bare minimum, right, if we are doing this and we're communicating with them, they are, and they can hear us, at least they know what we're doing. Okay. In that communication, they know what we're doing, and they're not as really worried about kind of what we're doing, right? You know, so I tell somebody as I'm working on them and say, hey, I'm going to place my hands on your leg to look for XYZ, or tell me if you feel any pain, right? So communicate with them. It's a great opportunity to verbally communicate. Normally I'll ask someone the same question several times, like, what's your name? Where do you live? What time is it? Right? Something like that, or what's the date, right? That way, you know, if there's an irregularity, they come up and they say, hey, my name's Dave. Then the next time they're like, my name's Dave. And then the third time they're like, nope, my name's Tom. Okay, we got something going on here, right? We got something going on. So communicate, right? All right, let's get into the ABCDEs. Okay, and again, this is what I learned through SOLO, the SOLO Wilderness First Aid course. So there's different ways of going about this, but starting with A, right? It's just, for me, it's an easy way to remember it. First part of A, and each one of these letters has two parts. So are they awake, right? We want to verify if that patient is awake, okay? Now, they may not be responsive verbally, right? As far as if I'm asking them questions, they may not be responding back. They could be in shock, all types of stuff, right? Yep, 100%, Chris. If we can keep them talking, we can keep them calm, and we can help reduce shock risk as well. And in groups, it keeps the group calm. Okay, as long as you're calm walking through this, then it really helps out that process. But Chris, you're 100% right. So we're verifying that they're awake, and we can do that through talking, right? We don't want to shake them because, again, and going back to if it's a positive MOI, right? We don't want to do any more damage to that spine. If the patient is non-responsive to verbal cues, okay, try a light pinch. Okay, a light pinch on the shoulder, the arm. Do it in a couple of spots, right? Because if they hurt an arm, they may not have a lot of feeling there. So maybe I'll pinch a thigh too, or give the ear just a gentle little tug to see, and look for any movement of their eyes. Look for any signal that they may give you to let you know that they're at least awake and aware to a certain extent. So super important, and that's always the first step, because if they're not awake, now that escalates the situation a little bit, but it gives us more information, right? It gives us more information if they're not awake. The next step is their airway. Okay, now this isn't necessarily checking for breathing. We just want to make sure their airway is clear. 100%, we want to make sure it's clear. Hey, Sean, glad to see you made it home safe from Winter Wonderland. You want to make sure that airway is open and clear. Do not stick your finger in their mouth. Okay, I'm going to say this again. Do not stick your finger in their mouth. Okay, because it could be somebody that is prone to epileptic seizures, right? You put your finger in their mouth and they bite down on your finger, then they swallow your finger or they hurt your finger. Okay, so we don't want to stick our finger in their mouth. Tongue depressors are great. A lot of first aid kits have them. And there's other options out there. Not always the best, but remember, this is wilderness. It's not always going to be a perfect world. Maybe it's a good solid stick that you're going to use, but make sure that they're not going to bite down on it and break it. Okay, and then again they swallow it. So we want to make sure that their airway is clear. They haven't swallowed their tongue. Somebody was sitting there eating lunch and suddenly, they froze and they're kind of looking around all wild-eyed. Maybe they swallowed something down the wrong hole and they're choking. So we want to make sure that airway is clear, which leads us to the next step, which is checking for their breathing, right? Breathing. Are they breathing? Okay, now this one can be hard sometimes, especially in wintertime, because if they've got big, heavy, puffy jackets on, or if they've been injured and their breathing is very, very shallow, then it can be hard to see their chest moving. Typically, I'll place a hand on their chest to see if their chest is moving up or down, right? See if that chest is moving up and down. Hey, Keith Weber. So make sure that if you can't feel anything with their chest, don't just immediately go to they're not breathing. Okay, in the absence of movement, again with like thick jackets or anything like that, or very, very shallow breathing, I'll put my ear to their mouth to see if I can hear breathing, or I'll take the inside of my wrist, and I'll show you guys here real fast. I'll take the inside of my wrist right here and I'll place it over close to their mouth, not against it, but close to their mouth, to see if I can feel any breath hitting that. Okay, and this may not be a super fast operation. We may just be trying to see if they're breathing. Now, there's also some other telltale cues. After 30 seconds or more has passed, then we see that they could start to be turning their lips turning blue, their fingers turning blue, stuff like that. That could also be from cold, but that could be a cue that we're having some issues with breathing. Next step is breathing quality, and this one is super important. Okay, super important. We've established that they're breathing, and we know that inhaling and exhaling, so we don't have to go right into CPR or anything like that, but we want to know how well they're breathing. Okay, is it shallow breathing? Are they taking huge gulping breaths sporadically? Struggling to breathe, kind of looks like a fish out of water. Their mouth is gaping open and shut, open and shut. And so we kind of want to identify that, because if it's shallow breathing, maybe they knock the wind out of their sails a little bit, knock their breath out, or maybe they did puncture a lung with a rib or something, depending on the severity of the accident. Okay, so we really want to know how's that breathing quality. So and again, a lot of times while I'm going through this process, I'm taking note of these things, right? I've identified they're awake, I've identified their airway is clear, I've identified that they are breathing, and I've identified that it is shallow breathing. So now I can watch over the next little bit to see if those things improve or deteriorate, and that lets me know how serious the situation is, right? Just lets me know how serious that situation is. So after we determine their breathing quality, okay, and I'll talk in just a minute about some of the things that we can do to help us remember this stuff, right? Now we're going to get into circulating, right? And not like circulating at a club and meeting new people. What I mean by circulating is bleeding, right? Bleeding or pumping of blood, okay? The first step is we want to identify if they are circulating internally. This does not necessarily mean we want to identify if they have internal bleeding. What we want to see is, do they have good solid pulse, okay? Because if they have a pulse, then we know that they are circulating blood internally, right? But I'm not just saying check his pulse at his wrist or neck. What I want you to do or think about is check each wrist, check at the feet, both feet and the neck, right? If we're going through that process and both wrists, we get a good pulse or an equal pulse, and we go through one foot, it's got a good strong pulse, but then we check the next one and we can't find the pulse, right? That could mean potentially there could be damage inside of that one leg, right? Same thing for an arm. If an arm does not have a good strong pulse in it while the other one does, it could mean that something's going on inside that arm, right? So could even mean internal bleeding. Okay, so we really want to check all those extremities, both wrists, both feet, and I always check neck too, okay, if I can, potentially. So that's to make sure, again, that the blood pumping and everything is functioning correctly internally. Next, we're checking for circulating externally, okay? You know, my buddy Bo Rosa was walking down the trail and he slipped and fell, right? And rolled down some rocks. And I get down there and he's laying down and it's obvious he's hurt. Okay. Once I go through the other stuff, now I'm checking for the damage that could be bleeding out. Okay. He skinned an arm or he cut his knee open or cut his thigh open. We're looking for blood. Okay. But things like wintertime, super cold, right? Super cold. Then we're looking at, we're not able to see that necessarily, right? Until it presents itself. It may not be a huge gushing wound. It might be a light wound. Okay. And again, remember what I said earlier, if we're out for 2 or 3 days, that could lead to infection. So we still need to handle it correctly. Okay. So that means that we're not just looking with our eyes. We want to make sure we're also using our hands. Okay, maybe if they fell on their chest cavity or upper chest area underneath a heavy jacket, we're sliding hands over their skin with sterile nitrile gloves on, right? Again, remember that BSI, that the sterile nitrile gloves, and we're looking for blood, okay? Because if we have someone bleeding, this typically is one of the first things that we're going to want to handle, right? Do we need to put pressure on it? Do we have to break out our first aid kit? That type of stuff, okay? So we want to look for circulating externally. I'm not, and again, going back to the mechanism of injury, if they're laying on their back and they landed on their back, that may mean that we need to stabilize this person's head and neck while we roll them onto their side so that we can check their back as well. Don't just start rolling them around, right? Again, if it's a positive mechanism of injury, which again means spinal injury, then we need to make sure that we're stabilizing that neck and head to not cause further issue. But we do still want to check their backs, everything for that circulating externally. And I don't like dark colored nitrile gloves like black, right? I like bright colored like the blue. I used to even have bright green and white, because then if I pull my glove out and I see that blood is on that glove, it's easier to see. Sometimes black gloves can be hard to see that, okay? So, and I'm not necessarily undressing. Again, that's a lot of unnecessary movement. If anything, right, if I have to, then maybe I'm using trauma shears to cut their clothes off, okay? I remember in Uwharrie, had a buddy of mine. He was getting out of his vehicle. It was raining, and he got out, foot hit the ground, slipped out from underneath, and his back skinned down the rocker panel of the truck, right? Seemingly innocuous, but he hit his head too, so he's a little disoriented. So I came up and I just checked the basics, right? Knees and elbows and the front and stuff like that. And, everything seemed okay. It wasn't necessarily a spinal injury, right? And this was before I really knew about spinal injuries. So he stood up, and the second he turned around, his entire shirt was soaked through. So he had skinned his back up pretty heavily. So we had to clean that up and bandage it up to get him off the trail. So again, don't just look at and say, hey, such and such, blah, 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 blah is okay, right? Check everything as best as you can. All right. So
moving on to the next one. Next slide here. All right, now we're at the D, right? The first D that we want to look for is deformity. Okay, and you can do this while you're running your hands over looking for blood. And going to get a little gross right here. Okay, and so hopefully your stomach isn't too squeamish. But now while we're looking, we're also feeling for anything abnormal, right? Broken bone poking out of the skin, arm doesn't feel right, rib doesn't feel right. You can even apply a little bit of pressure, not a lot, right? Apply a little bit of pressure as you're looking around to look for kind of squeamishness or any types of cues from the person, right? As long as they're awake and they're coherent. They may even groan if they're not awake, okay? But that'll let us know about a deformity that has happened, okay? Broken bone, broken toes. And again, we're checking everything we possibly can, okay? Everything we possibly can. And it's not necessarily be something, again, that you feel or you see. You may hear it too with that groan. On motorcycles, a lot of time wearing motorcycle boots, they tell you if you hurt your feet, don't take your boot off until you get to the hospital. So a lot of times I'll squeeze through those boots to make sure and feel to see if there's going to be any response in there, right? Again, it's going to be uncomfortable for them, but we need to find it. We need to find it. So, hey, Randy, yeah, you finally made it. So the next step is disability, right? And this does not mean like a disability, in the general sense. What we're checking for is we're checking for a disability that's caused by the injury, right? We're checking for sensations and movements at all hands and feet. Can they feel your touch on their hands? Can they feel your touch on your feet? You can do this right along with deformity. When you're squeezing those fingers, looking for broken fingers or wrists or anything like that, can they feel you touching them? Can they get sensation out of that? And the next step, can they get movement out of that, right? Can they get movement if they're awake? Okay, can they wiggle their fingers and toes? Typically, now we know that even though maybe they slipped and fell, it's not something where they could potentially be paralyzed or even more serious spinal injury than we originally thought, right? So can they wiggle those fingers and toes? This can be hard with boots on because some of us wear pretty heavy boots when we're out there, and some of us wear Chacos all the time. I know. But if I can grab those boots and feel for any movement, or maybe just get them to wiggle their ankles, right? Get them to wiggle their ankles and their wrists a little bit if we can. So don't just start taking shoes and stuff off. But that's what I mean by disabilities, right? If I say, hey, wiggle your toes, and Bo, after he fell down the rock, can't wiggle his toes, we got a serious problem. Okay, he can't feel sensation when I'm squeezing down there, we got a serious problem. We need to identify how deep that problem goes, and we need to keep him stabilized. And now we're even more so, we are planning that evacuation route. How are we getting this person out, or how are we getting people to them? Okay, so if Bo can wiggle all his fingers and toes, he's conscious, he's awake, blah, 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 all the good stuff, we may not have to be in such a rush. We can kind of really take our time and really focus on the comfort. Okay. So that's deformity and disability. Let's go to E. Okay. And this is usually a very overlooked one because it's not necessarily our first forethought when we are working through getting someone comfortable and stabilized, right? But environmental exposure for the first E, right? We want to stabilize that patient against any environmental concerns, heat, cold, whatever it may be. We want to stabilize them. Cover them with a blanket will help, or a jacket will help to prevent shock, right? Keep them warm, and make sure they are comfortable. We're waiting until we kind of got them stabilized to do this, right? Because again, we don't want to cover them with a blanket and then be moving that blanket off looking for bleeding and stuff like that. But we do want to get them comfortable, especially if we're waiting for EMTs to come out on the trail. That's going to take a while, right? So we want to keep them comfortable. What about if they're in rain, right? What if it's raining and they slipped and fell? Maybe that's how Bo fell down the rock. It was raining, so he slipped on a rock and he fell down and he got hurt. we don't want to move Bo, right? We want to keep him safe and don't want to hurt his spine. So maybe we have to cover him with a tarp. We make a little lean-to. Maybe, being an overlander, we pull up next to him and we pull an awning out to get the rain off of him. Whatever we can do to keep them comfortable, right? The environmental exposure. And the other very, very, very important aspect of this, remember what I said first, right? About take care of yourself first, your group second, then your patient third. Take care of everyone else. Okay. If now we are going to be sitting here with this person and waiting for maybe an hour, 2 hours, whatever it may be, and everybody's going to be sitting around, we don't want, if it's cold, we want everybody bundled up or maybe inside vehicles warming up, being comfortable. If now that their adrenaline is coming down, one that, again, we don't think about, maybe it caused some blood sugar issues, right? So now their adrenaline's coming down. Somebody had a little bit of blood sugar issues and they're having some issues. So we really want to take care of everyone else too. Austin, I was always taught to also be concerned about safety of the surrounding environment, power lines, traffic, etc. 100%, 100%. I drive Sarah nuts because if I see an accident on the side of the road and medical is not there, I stop, right? I stop to help. Now you got traffic flying by, all kinds of stuff like that on the trail. If you're on public trail system, you got ATVs, side-by-sides, whatever. If you're in a sharp turn or on a hill, you don't want someone starting to come down that hill or around that turn too fast. So we have to manage that, right? We have to manage that as part of that environmental. So, but taking care of everyone else, again, we don't want to add to the statistic we already have, right? So take care of everybody else. Make sure everybody has water. Make sure everybody's warm and comfortable or dry or whatever, so that if we are sitting here and waiting for a while, we don't have to worry about them, right? We don't want one injury to become 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So being very aware, and that's the E, right? Mostly the environmental concerns, but also everyone else. So that's the ABCDEs of kind of patient assessment, right? Chris Andrew, assigning tasks to group members can help to keep people from panicking. 1,000%, 1,000%. Even in recoveries, right? When adrenaline's spiking, I like to do this. I like to get them comfortable and keep them engaged in what's going on, so people know, right? If I'm over there and this vehicle slid off the trail a little bit, maybe it's on the side of a hill or a mountain, maybe I'm not concerned about it, but everybody else might be. So if I give them jobs to keep them engaged and stuff, it works out well. I don't necessarily like just saying, hey, go back to the vehicle and wait. Okay. Because if I do that and that becomes a problem, right? Then all they're doing is thinking. Okay. And there's stuff, even if they don't have medical training, there is stuff that you can do to keep people engaged. Hey, go grab me a water, right? Go grab me a water and bring bottled waters, pass bottled waters out to everybody. Yeah, we don't need nine people calling 911. We don't need 9 people calling 911 all at once either. 100%, right? We don't need multiple reporting. Have that plan of action, and maybe that's what you do. You say, hey, Chris, get me a plan of action for getting out of here. What's the shortest route? Do we call 911? Find out who has signal, who's bringing me supplies, right? So keeping people engaged can really kind of keep them out of trouble. So see if I can get this swapped over here. All right. So taking that one off, throwing me up there. So you guys got me again. All right. Hopefully I'm not having any more webcam issues here. I'm going to pull down this Southern 4-wheel drive stuff right here, just so we get it off the screen. So again, just to reiterate that's talking about those ABCDEs, right? For those of you that joined us a little bit later, I mentioned earlier, I do upload these videos onto YouTube. So you can go over to YouTube and watch any of these recorded ones. Again, shameless plug. Go on over there, subscribe to us. Should be a playlist that says Off-Road Essentials live streams or something. You can go on there and you can rewatch the part of the video you missed. So don't feel like you missed anything. So, all right. I'm not going to go much more in depth. Again, there's a whole deal that I kind of follow based on, again, how I was trained. But we just don't have that kind of time. It took me 2 days to go through that process, but I'm going to show you a couple of things, and then we're going to look at a first aid kit. The first thing I'm going to show you is this right here. Okay, this is a card I carry with me everywhere. Okay, this was one I purchased not long after, but you can see it's got my ABCDEs right there. Awake, right, airway, breathing quality, circulating in, circulating out, disability, deformity, and all the environmental and everyone else, right? But what's cool is, look at that. This goes with me absolutely everywhere in my wallet, okay? Not only does it go through my checklist, that I have, but it also gives me some stuff, because again, I'm not a doctor, right? I'm not a doctor. But it gives me some stuff to think about if we come up with a burn on the trail. Maybe it's a hard burn on the trail. So it's got little breakdowns for all types of stuff like low blood sugar, burns, insect bites, anaphylactic shock, even more serious stuff like, hey, this person's asphyxiating, and kind of break some of that down. So I carry this with me everywhere. Again, it fits right in my wallet here. And I like it because, number one, I don't have to read through everything. I'm not dependent on my phone or anything, but on the back, it's got an index and tells me exactly which page to go through for whatever I'm looking for. For instance, if I'm looking for the patient assessment system, it tells me to go right to the front page. If I'm looking at maybe dehydration, it tells me to go to page 40, right? So it's bright right on the back right there, and it's got the quick stuff right on the front. Also with this little thing, it's hard to see here, but right there, we call a soap note, right? A soap note. And I can't remember what it's for, but what a soap note is earlier I was talking about remembering some of this stuff as we kind of go through it. As we kind of go through that process, remembering that stuff so that we can see if things are changing as we're moving through that, so we can write stuff down. Or if you want to keep people engaged, you can be announcing it and having them write it down in a soap note, right? I typically want it written out if possible on that soap note, because what I'm going to do, if when Bo slipped and fell, we decided he needs to go to the hospital, whether I take him to the hospital or EMTs take him, whoever picks him up or whoever I hand him off to is going to get that soap note, right? They're going to get that, and it's going to have all of his vitals I've been taking, his level of consciousness, all through everything that I've kind of found. And I've done this before on accidents, and I've just verbalized it sometimes if I couldn't write it down, but I've also handed off that soap note, and I've seen it go both ways. I've seen an EMT just toss the soap note to the side and not even look at it. And again, that doesn't bother me a bit because they're going to go through their own process of assessing him. But I also had another EMT one time take my soap note and start reading it and look at me like, you got to be kidding me. You have all this information already. And I said, yeah, we've been here for 30 minutes, and that is that's how we kind of came up with getting all that information and passing it along, so it can help them. Maybe they had an allergy to something and they can't verbalize that. So just being aware of that and handing off that soap note can be huge, right? Austin, where did I get this? I got this through Solo. After I graduated from their course, I went to their website, which is Solo, SOLOWFA, right, .com. So Solo, WFA, wildernessfirstaid.com, solowfa.com. Let me see here real fast, see if I can put that on a ticker. And honestly, it's been so long since I got mine. I'm sure their website still works, but I don't know if maybe it moved or it's under a different name or whatever. But it's down there in the bottom right now. Right now, that's where I got this. I also got some other things. I've got a bandana that stays in our camper, right? Because sometimes when I'm in our camper or in one of the vehicles, I don't have my wallet on me because I don't like sitting on my wallet while riding. I can grab that bandana. It's got not necessarily all this information on it, but it has this main stuff on the front and some kind of tricks and stuff to it. So I have that bandana with me at all times in a vehicle or something like that. And I got that through there too. So, Randy, yes, Randy, you're 100% right. Like we talked about earlier. Let me see if I can bring it back here. Yeah. When we talked about, let me go over one more. We talked about that body substance isolation, meaning we want to isolate ourselves from them, not necessarily just the patient, but ourselves. So we want to be wearing sterile nitrile gloves. These are not the nitrile gloves that you get from Harbor Freight in a box, right? They need to come out of a first aid kit and out of a package that's been sealed. So yeah, you are 100% right. 100% right. Yeah, I have seen people on the blue ones write stuff down with like a Sharpie. There you go, Dan. Thank you for throwing that up. So subjective, objective, subjective, objective assessment plan. So yeah, soap sheet, right? Yeah, Apple Watches and stuff like that. Yeah, so you can have stuff like that that they can pull vitals and stuff from. I also I like to ride motorcycles, right? I don't ride on road anymore, mostly off road, but a lot of times I end up riding by myself. Let me get a drink of water here. I used to, when I rode on road, and I should be doing it now, but I had a little necklace with a USB stick on it that had all my information on it, right? If I'm hurt and they can't talk to me, I'm not responsive, they could get all of that off there. Emergency contacts, blood types, allergies, which I don't have any allergies that I know of, all that good stuff, address, all that stuff was on that USB stick. So super good thing to carry. All right. So that's that sheet right there. And I also carry, I don't have it with me, but another thing I also carry on my key ring, I have a CPR face mask and I have sterile nitrile gloves. Okay. Both of them in sealed containers that I would have to tear open to access. But I keep those on my person on my key ring at all times so I can easily get to them, whether they're in the vehicle or whatever. So that way we are keeping that BSI at bay, right? And yeah, we can do CPR and mouth to mouth without it, right? If we need to, but if you have it, you can use it, and if we carry it, use it. But with the nitrile gloves, I do consider those a necessity. They have to be a necessity, and they have to be sterile when you're using it. I typically will not put hands on someone without those nitrile gloves, right? Or certainly not on skin to skin contact. I may, touch a shoulder or something like that to feel, oh, yep, my wonderful wife just came in here. So I carry this little thing right here, right? So Velcroed out, pop it open. It's really small and easy to carry, but inside here, I've got my face mask and my nitrile gloves for CPR. So it goes on my key ring, and I carry it with me at all times. I used to, back in the day, I used it in a vehicle, but I lost them. I'm not the best at keeping stuff. And hopefully your first aid kit has too, right? So let's talk about aid kits, okay? Before I start showing you some first aid kits, I want to kind of talk a little bit about some arguments about first aid kits. Some people say I don't have the skills to carry a first aid kit that does XYZ. you should only carry a first aid kit that it fits within the skills that you have, right? But we don't always necessarily know who's going to be assessing the situation, right? If I slip and fall, I may not have the skills, or sorry, I may not have the certification anymore to do a trach, but someone there might. And so I will carry that type of stuff with me in a first aid kit. And I don't mean the little cheap first aid kits from Walmart. If that's all you carry and that's all you can afford, great. Add to it as time goes on. But we're not talking about those kits. So the kits I'm going to show you, they are very complete kits. I have kind of switched. I still carry. We still have another kit that we carry too. That's more of a trauma kit, and it's by a company called Outer Limits Supply. But I now have started carrying these My Medic kits, right? And I'll tell you the reason why, and we'll kind of see the reason why. What I found with some of the other kits was that it was incredibly difficult to replace stuff once it had been used, right? Hey, I used some medication. A lot of companies that you buy your first aid kits from, they're like, oh, well, you got to buy this whole part of the kit, or you got to buy a whole nother kit. And I'm like, well, I don't need all that stuff. I just need the medication that was in there, or XYZ that was in there. So My Medic really breaks it down and simplifies it. So this is their mini, right? All three that I'm going to show you today are the Pro. And before I do that, okay, again, I got something cool for you. So there's a QR code that will take you to Revere Overland where you can purchase these. And thank you, Commonwealth 4x4, but they gave us a 10% off code on the My Medic kits at Revere Overland. So MOA Medic 10 for 10% off, right? But this is the mini, okay? So two things before I even open this up, right? They have this nice little clasp on the front, okay, that holds it tight. It's got the first aid so everybody can see it. You can get it in different colors, but I like bright colors because if it gets lost in a vehicle and you can't find the black one because it's underneath the seat, or the gray one because it's shoved in a corner somewhere in a drawer, it does you no good. Molly panel on the back. But this is, again, what I love so much. Once I unclip it, right, still attached to the Molly panel, I don't have to try to undo all this stuff right here. Pull it off, and it's got a nice shoulder strap. Now, if I'm crawling over rocks, I don't have to worry about it. All of their packs, as far as I know, do that, right? And again, it's incredibly easy with these to replace any of the stuff inside of it. The reason being is because everything, they break it down as mods, right? So let me open up this mini here. But once you open it up, okay, this particular one just is two sides here. But once we open it up, let's say that Bo is bleeding, right? I have my bleed stop, and it's part of the bleeding mod. So I can just go on their website and buy the bleeding mod to replace it, okay? So cool. Yeah. So FSA for My Medic, and they honor that discount. That's awesome. So I can easily replace this stuff in there, or if I'm looking for something easily, I just look for the mod, right? Hey, such and such has a blister. They're having a hard time walking, and we need to get out because the thunderstorm's coming in. So I just grab the blister mod, right? So everything's separated out into mods. Very easy to keep up with it. Like this right here, they call this the compressed gauze. It's part of the bleed mod, right? And it's red. So everything's color coded too. So really, really, really makes it easy when you're trying to identify stuff that's shoved in here. And it comes with a lot of good stuff, good medical quality stuff. It also, they have a little QR code that you can scan that gives you a nice their walkthrough of it. So nitrile gloves, okay, that I can use. And again, they're sterile. As I pull stuff out of here, make sure I pack it up, right? Survival rescue blanket. Not only is it reflective for signaling and stuff like that, but it's also going to help somebody if they're cold. All kinds of stuff in here. I'm not going to go through every little thing that's in here. Tourniquets, but, like right here, it's a mini. This is a mini medication mod, right? So it has ibuprofen in it, fever reducer, pain relief, diarrhea, nausea, motion sickness, allergy relief, anti-diarrhea, cold and fever reducer, right? So that type of stuff. Biggest one for me, right, is in all of the kits that I carry, this is the hydration mod, right? So if someone's dehydrated because they haven't been drinking, uh, then I can put this in there and it'll replace those electrolytes, right? So it comes with a lot of this different stuff. Nice Sharpie in there so that you can make those notes. So it's a very good kit. This is the mini kit. It's not going to have everything for every situation, but it's going to have most everything for most everything that you're going to run into. It's a really good one, especially if you're going to be out of the vehicle a lot. So you can go hiking and carry it with you, that type of stuff. And it's not a big, heavy backpack or something like that, right? So that's the mini. Go with the next one. What we got here? Tony, you carry a Mini Pro in all your cars. Yeah. It's carrying them in every single vehicle is great because then you don't have to worry about moving it from vehicle to vehicle. Rick, when it comes to these situations, people mostly focus on the response portion. I'll respond, great, I'll do this, I'll do that. Think about if you don't react well, I'm not going to add to the problem scenario. Yeah. We talked about that in the beginning. Take care of yourself first, right? Don't become part of the statistic. And second, take care of the group, right? If it's a group. And then third, take care of your patients. Super important. And yet most people have not seen trauma, have not seen some of the stuff out there, and they will react differently. Have a personal plan or understanding of that potentially happening, because if the situation is unfortunately bad enough, this definitely can and will happen. Be prepared to respond, train yourself, but understand it's a possibility. 100%, right? 100%. So take Sarah, for example, right? Sarah, my amazing wife, who does all kinds of awesome things, right? She competed in the Artemis Rally, drives off-road, puts up with me. She cannot do blood, right? If she sees blood or trauma, she's going to become a statistic. She's going to pass out like that, right? So it's one of those things where she knows she can't handle that, so we have to plan accordingly. So I try to make sure that both of my young boys have the skills. So at least more than one person in the vehicle has the skills and can handle that. So excellent point, Rick. Be prepared for that. And that's, again, going back to, I'm not here to give you, I don't teach for certifications. I'm just giving you some stuff to think about. Go take a course. In our solo course, the wilderness first aid, and then when I did the wilderness first responder, they did situations, right? We do a little classroom time, then they'd go out and they'd simulate, hey, this person broke their leg. What are you doing, right? How do you handle it? And they'd make it so your adrenaline was pumping a little bit, right? So next one here, this is the MyFac Mini Pro first aid kit, kind of the next step up, right? So where you can see this one, a little bit smaller. This one's going to have some more stuff in it and more of everything else. Same type of stuff. The back tears off of it. Again, I like bright red. That's kind of the universal for first aid, but you can see the difference right now. Not only do we have a center divider, but both sides are packed full. Some of the other stuff that you're going to see in this that the other kits don't, number one, they're going to have more, right? More of the stuff that's in there, multiples. Glow stick, right? It's nighttime. We need to be able to see a little bit. Maybe your headlight dies, right? You need something a little extra or something like that. So this is a big one, right? This is super wash, but it is sterile topical wash, right? To clean out a wound. Eye wash, right? You get something in your eye. Maybe, your buddy broke his Jeep on the trail, because we know Jeeps break all the time. I'm joking. But they were working underneath and he got something in his eye and he can't get it out. Now he's struggling to drive because his eye is irritated and it's getting scratched. We can flush it out with this, right? There we are. We got Revere Overland here on the YouTube side. Yeah, thanks for joining in, Rob. Again, the website I'm sending you to in the corner there is Revere Overland. They partner with Commonwealth. This is what Rob carries. And for those of you that don't watch him on YouTube, you really should. His videos are amazing. So some of the other stuff that you're going to see in this that you don't see in the other, You're going to have the rapid tourniquet, which is different than the other one. It's a little bit more heavy duty. You're going to have like many topical mods for cleaning, but even like oral pain relief. Hey, you know, your underwear didn't fit well and you're starting to chafe, so they have chafing cream, all kinds of good stuff. Again, all color coded, all labeled as that mod, so you can easily replace it. So we're starting to see a lot more, even have some paracord in here. They do have, in this particular one, a mini tool mod right here that comes with tweezers, whistle, and a pin light, right? So little stuff like that really make these stand out. Z-zips, okay? These things are awesome if you have a large cut that may need stitches, but you got to get it closed. You can do that. And now we're starting to see some of the more serious stuff, right? So like this particular item right here, this is a nasopharyngeal blah, blah, blah airway, right? An MPA basically is what I call them. But you can have this to put in someone's nose to open up an airway, okay? So again, we're starting to see the more advanced kits are carrying a little bit more stuff. Even here, we got chest seals for a open chest wound, so that we can get that sealed up. I always make the joke, right? In trail rides, when I carried our Outer Limits supply one, I tell everybody, I say, okay, grab, if you need it or we need it and I ask for it, grab the trauma kit, because it'll handle everything from low blood sugar, boo-boos, and ouchies all the way up to gunshot wounds. But it may not be gunshot wounds. Side-by-sides and stuff, puncture wounds are big because the stick comes in off the trail and it punctures. Chest seals needed, right? So this one also comes with trauma shears as well as some paracord 550. So, and now we're starting to get into fractures and sprains and stuff like that. So that's the kind of the mid-size kit, right? And they have a ton of different kits, but these are the three kind of most important ones. So where the first one, that IFAC Mini, right, Pro, that's kind of like for one or two people. This is when you're starting to get into 2, 3, maybe even 4 people around, or potential injuries. So you're wanting to carry something a little bit bigger. But if you're like me and you're doing guiding and you're carrying groups and you want to be prepared, that's where you're running into the big kits, right? The really big kits. So this is the MyFac Large Pro, again, the Pro one. And that's all they have on their website is the Pro one. And I kind of recommend everybody go with that one. But this is where you're really starting to see a lot to handle situations. Where the other one only had one, this one comes with 2, right? Comes with 2. And there's even more in here, okay? So not just multiples of stuff, but there's even more stuff. Now in our burn mod, right, the orange one, we're seeing burn relief gels and burn relief dressings. You have a big burn, don't just put gauze on it because it's going to be terrible when it comes off, right? It's going to be terrible. And it's going to do a ton of damage when you take it off of there. So those burn gels and the burn gel dressings help with that. And, you know, we've all kind of run into it where we burn ourselves on the exhaust because we're working underneath our Jeep, right? Not me, because I don't have a Jeep anymore. Joking, guys. I love Jeeps. So there's just a lot more in here. Same thing. Now we're seeing, let me kind of tilt this forward here. You don't have to see my face. Seeing, again, a whole lot of extra stuff in here. With our fractures and stuff, we're seeing, you know, starting to get into flat splints, formable splints, and stuff like that, that are great, right? You know, it's cushioned, but it also has a little bit of metal underneath the cushion, and we can form it to people. We're seeing, again, trauma shears, all the same stuff, and so much more, okay? So much more. So even in this, in the tool portion that I showed you earlier, if I can find it, maybe not, but it's stuck in there somewhere. But in the tool portion, it even has a thermometer. So we can start taking somebody's temperature, right? Big one right here, okay? This is another thing that I like to carry. This is what we would call glucose. It's 15 grams of glucose. This is particular brands Transcend, but this is to raise low blood sugar. Remember what I was telling you about after everybody's adrenaline spikes and then starts to come back down, some of those people can end up with low blood sugar, right? Because it spikes and it comes back down. Picking your nose is a sure way to fit your MPA. Yeah, match the finger to the tube, and that's the right size. Plus, measure from the nostril to the earlobe without straightening the tube. Yeah, yeah, definitely, Randy. All right. So this is the Pro Kit. Again, this is great if you're spending a lot of time in groups. You're like me, you're a guide. If you're going out and you're constantly with, 4 or 5 rigs, 6 rigs, 7 rigs, even more, this is the kit you want to carry. It's a whole lot bigger, right? It's a whole lot bigger, but it's got a whole lot more in it, as well as a lot of stuff that the other kits don't have. Same thing still holds true here on the back, right? Would pull off the molly, and again, you've got your shoulder strap to carry it. So quick deploy, right? Quick deploy. And for those of you that are just joining us, kind of just to reiterate, down there at the bottom, Commonwealth and Revere Overland agreed MOA Medic 10 to get 10% off the My Medic kits on their webpage. You can scan that QR code up there and go check them out, right? First aid kits, had a brain fart there for a minute, but first aid kits are one of the areas where I don't skimp, right? I don't skimp. I spend so much time in the backcountry and guiding and stuff. I do spend the money to get a good first aid kit. If you can't do that right now, that's okay. Start building your first aid kit. Go buy the basics, right? Good set of trauma shears, some gauze, some blood clot, some bandages, those types of things. Start with the basic, but always be adding to it. Always be adding to it. Carry some basic medications, right? Randy said, does it have the magic rehydration pills? It does not have the pills. This particular one has a powder that you dissolve in water to get them rehydrated and have all those electrolytes and stuff in there. So it doesn't have the magic rehydration pills. Those are really hard. I found, because we had them in our other kit, they're really hard to get our hands on. But those little packets are a whole lot easier to do that. So, all right, guys. I'm going to go over a few things here. I'm going to leave that QR code up right there for just a minute. So if you want to scan it and go, please do. If not, just go straight to revereoverland.com and check it out. If you do go through the QR code, I do get a kickback, affiliate link, but I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about you guys being safe and getting a good deal on a recovery kit so you have it with you. But just to kind of rehash a couple of things, right? The most important, and I'm going to throw this back up right here. I go all the way back to 1, 2, right? This is the most important beginning to anything that happens. The triple S, right? The triple S, size up the scene and safety first. Size up the scene and safety first. Let me say it again. Size up the scene and safety first. Take care of yourself first. Don't be part of the accident. Don't be part of the statistic, right? Take care of yourself. Get everything you need. Walk down there. The extra minute it's going to take is not going to, if it does, then unfortunately there probably wasn't much we could do anyway, right? Take care of the group second, okay? We don't want the group freaking out, running around, and causing another accident. Suddenly one accident becomes 2. Instead of 3 people hurt, we got 6, and it can spiral out of control. It's always, when bad stuff happens, it's a series of bad decisions that we kept stacking on top of each other. And then attend to the patient, right? Then attend to the patient, okay? So just be aware of that. And if it is what we call a positive MOI, a mechanism of injury, do not move the patient. Do not let them move. Keep their neck and head stabilized, keep them steady, get them stabilized, and go through that process, okay? That being said, if it is that positive MOI, okay, then when you're going through that process and it's positive MOI, you don't know if their spine's good or bad. If you cannot get someone to come in like EMTs or whatever, then at that point in time, you can go through a process that we call clearing the spine, right? And again, that little, this right here, that was at that solo WFA.com actually goes through that. So it talks about clearing that spine. Okay, if I remember right, let me double check, make sure I'm not lying to you. It does. It talks about clearing that spine as well as other things, so that you can make sure you can move that person, or maybe you need several people to help you move them so that you don't have to worry about causing more damage. You can, potentially cause paralysis through a spine injury after the fact, right? After the fact. All right. So shameless promotions here for just a minute, but I'm going to throw up another QR code that's got all of our upcoming classes there. We've got one coming up this weekend. We're going to be in Uwharrie. The weekend after that, we are going to be somewhere. We're going to be in Nashville for a class, but that's private. But then the weekend after that, the first weekend of February, we're going to be at Windrock with Commonwealth doing a trail ride, an intermediate trail ride there, camping out for the whole weekend and hanging out. So we've got some cool stuff coming up, and really excited. We've got some classes coming up. So make sure you scan that QR code, go check out our upcoming classes, or, text whatever you need to do to get out. Looking back to make sure I caught everything. I don't see any questions or anything like that I missed. But guys, I'm loving doing these live streams. Do everything you can to help us out. Like, share, comment, tell your mom, your dad, your brother, sister, aunts, uncles, whatever, right? Your dog's hairdresser about these, so that, it kind of helps us get the word out, let people know about who we are. YouTube doesn't pay us, Facebook doesn't pay us or anything like that. So, just kind of putting this out so everybody kind of sees what we're doing. That helps us, right? We make money doing classes and stuff, and that's what we want. So the more you guys can do that and share this stuff, the better it is. Maybe one day YouTube, I'll be YouTube famous like Revere, but probably not, right? I'm not as exciting, and I'm not British, right, Rob? But that being said, if you have missed any of our live streams, you came in late today, all that's going to be saved on YouTube on our channel. Subscribe, go to the playlist for live streams, and it'll all be right there. Outside of that, guys, thank you so much for listening to me ramble on. If you have ideas or are interested in seeing something on these live streams, a specific topic, let me know, right? Let me know. Send us a text, email, whatever, smoke signals, whatever it takes. Our cell phone numbers are on the website. You can even send us Facebook or Instagram messages, and we will be glad to make that happen. Even if I got to bring somebody else in that knows more about it than you do. But thank you, Jen. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, James. Yeah, Rob. I'm just not as handsome as you. I don't have that British accent type thing going on. And again, huge thanks to Revere Overland and Commonwealth for giving us those discount codes. I'll throw that up one more time so you have a chance to go. And I think those discount codes last a little while, a couple weeks maybe. So if you're on the fence, make sure you go back. Southern 4-wheel drives right there, discount code MOA Medic 10 at revereoverland.com. And as Austin said earlier too, the NFA, you can get a discount on their website. Make sure you go check out Southern 4-wheel drive, sfwda.org for Southern 4-wheel drive's Trail Fest, April 11th and 14th at Colmont. Outside of that, guys and gals, thank you so much for listening to me ramble. And I'm going to go get warm because it's been like 1 degree this morning and our camper is just freezing all the time. Water lines freezing, all that crazy stuff. So I'm going to go crawl under the covers and annoy Sarah for a while. And we'll go from there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, get out on the trail, find some adventure, and bye.